Okay, folks, welcome to the first of my videos on Alphacore number 1, entitled It's Problematic. Let's see, we've got cover D off to the side. That is the cover of my reading copy of Alphacore number 1. I also have Alphacore number 1 cover A by Joe Bennett, which I have torn apart and cannibalized for scans. So those are the scans that you'll be seeing in this video. I will be covering pages 1 through 10 in some amount of detail. So if you don't want any Alphacore spoilers yet, then you might want to hold off until you've got your copy in hand and can get your own first impressions, etc., etc. But I will be dealing with the various first few pages of Alphacore number 1 in some detail, so be prepared, there'll be spoilers ahead. Now, before I made this video, I sent out a YouTube short asking people if they wanted to participate in a Alphacore number 1 review challenge. And the review challenge basis was something like this. I found 6 problems in the first 8 pages of Alphacore number 1. I could tell you what they are, but why should I have all the fun? Take my Alphacore number 1 review challenge and see if you can spot the 6 problems. So that was the challenge that I issued. And even though I got about 444 views, my number of respondents was exactly 1. Which left me feeling like, come on now, where the heck is everybody? I mean, I'm making these videos so that you can get better at spotting these things yourself and improving your writing and your own editing and artwork and stuff. Work with me here. So anyway, I did get at least 1 respondent, and that 1 respondent, of course, is going to be the winner of this review challenge. Now, let me go ahead and start diving in. We'll start with the covers that were offered for Alphacore number 1. Of course, I purchased cover D as my reading copy. I like the presentation of the main group there. And I also like the presentation of the main group in number 2. And of course, this is the one that's most closely related to the story. But at the same time, I didn't really like the way that I keep wanting to call her Liliana, Ingrid Valdez, she's got her whips just kind of flying around there and didn't really seem to have rhyme or reason to it. So I didn't care for that cover quite as much, which is why it became the copy that I would cannibalize. And then we've got Turnian's copy on, which is the foil cover of Alphacore number 1, featuring Michael Copper and Lillian Renashi on the cover in the foreground with Alphacore in the background. And since the group is in the background, then I considered that the 3rd best cover, followed by the 4th best cover being the one that was strictly Ingrid Valdez versus Lillian Renashi. It doesn't even feature the full group. Now, when you turn the page, you come to the Rippaverse ethic, and I just wanted to point out that I was tickled that Brian Solari is taking center stage here with the Rippaverse ethic page as opposed to ISOM. I just figured ISOM would be the one who did all of those pages. I wonder if that has anything to do with the lawsuit that is still pending with Eric July and that ministry over the ISOM trademark. But in any case, it is appropriate for Brian Solari to show up promoting the Rippaverse ethic. Of course, if you watch my latest video or my most previous Rippaverse video on the Rippaverse ethic and whether the Rippaverse Studios might have broken it, well, maybe this page just needs to go by the wayside altogether. We'll see. I love this presentation page. This presentation page is so good, it could have been a 5th cover, honestly. I mean, this could have been ISOM cover E, as far as I'm concerned, and I probably would have bought it. So this is an excellent presentation page. Love this. I definitely like it better than the blank, just basically art page that was given to us to look at the beginning of ISOM number 2. You can check that out in my opening nitpicks video on ISOM number 2. When you turn the page here, you get to the title page. And on the title page, you've got Chuck Dixon as writer, Joe Bennett as penciler, and oh my God, there's 5 different inkers. What the heck? Inking is just as much an art form as penciling, and different inkers bring a different inking style unless they've all been trained in the same way. So here's hoping that even though we've got 5 different inkers on Alphacore #1, it turns out that we wind up with a consistent style for the book. It might happen, it might not. We'll just have to see. But my goodness, that's a trainload full of inkers. We've also got a little blurb box down here, and I remember from ISOM #2 that I felt like, oh, this is like hand-holding to give the, I thought you weren't going to do any hand-holding for the customers to explain things. You were just going to let your books tell the stories, and then I thought, this little blurb right here is not really any different from what Marvel used to do with at the top of their comics, like Amazing Spider-Man, when they would give this little explanation of Peter Parker and, how he got his powers and stuff, and then the Hulk and how he got his powers. And of course, we don't know anything about Isom's powers or how he got those, or right now anything about Alphacore. But this little blurb on Alphacore. I kind of put this on par with these old Marvel style blurbs, and so I don't really feel like this is anything to give him any crap over. Now, I do feel that the previously box that was given in ISOM #2, I do think that was hand-holding. And to me, you should be able to tell your story in issue #2, referencing things that happened in issue #1 vaguely enough so that you're not like giving exposition altogether on issue #1, but you're at least giving the reader enough information that the reader doesn't have to have little hand-holding things like this. So if you look at my video on ISOM #2 called Speaking of a Bad Segue, you'll see how I feel that the scenes at the beginning of ISOM #2 could have been constructed so as to communicate the gist of ISOM #1 without just laying everything out for the reader, but having it all done within the context of the story. So the blurb on the left for Alphacore, I'm totally down with that, but previously boxes, like we see on ISOM #2 here, not down with that at all. Now, another thing I'm not down with is all the bloat and lack of clarity that comes in the blurb. So we're going to go through the blurb line by line, and we're going to fix this. And there's several ways in which it needs to be fixed in order to get rid of unnecessary words and also to bring clarity to it that will sharpen it up and make it into a more worthy blurb for this book. So we start off saying, though an affluent city, Florispark is not without problems. Okay, this is a crime drama book. We're talking about like Law and Order here. So let's say not without crime. The Florispark police are very capable. We don't need the word very, just say capable, of handling formidable threats. But accepts needs to be bolded. Reason being is that we want people to understand this is our word in the Rippaverse for superhumans. But accepts still exist. Why still exist? I know there's kind of a sense in which we're saying, well, still the accepts exist, but it makes it sound as though you weren't expecting them to exist. It's like, are they still here? But if this is just a fact of life that you have accepts in the Rippaverse, let's turn this into more of a, this is just an established fact. But accepts do exist. And some of them have the worst of intentions. Worst of intentions, let's get rid of and just say worst intentions. And of course, and that's why, no, let's just have that's why. They, who's they? The subject line of the previous sentence was accepts, and some of the accepts. Do the accepts need Alphacore? No, we understand intuitively that it's the Florispark police who need Alphacore, but at the same time, you need to make that clear because the subject that you're talking about doesn't just automatically change as if by telepathy. You need to make it clear that that's why the police need Alphacore, except I don't think need is the right word. And the reason need is not the right word is because Alphacore, it makes it sound like Alphacore is something above and beyond the police, kind of like the Justice League. But that's not what they are. They're actually a function of the police. They are a branch of the police that deals with accept threats. So the police actually have Alphacore. Excuse me. So now we have our box that says, though an affluent city, Florispark is not without crime. The Florispark police are capable of handling formidable threats, but accepts do exist, and some of them have the worst intentions. That's why the police have Alphacore. So there you go. There's a worthy blurb box for you. Now, as regards the review challenge, I did lay out 3 very simple rules. First, look for the 6 problems on page 1 and pages 4 through 8. Ignore pages 2 and 3. That's because pages 2 and 3 are a double page spread that don't really do anything other than it just establishes setting, and it's a beautiful shot. I mean, I really didn't find reason to complain about the shot, but there's not a lot happening in those particular pages that would cause you to think, oh, something went wrong here. There is 1 problem per page on those remaining 6 pages. And actually, there's more than that, but I figured if I could just basically get people to pick out 1 problem per page, then, I've made some progress in educating y'all on what to look for. The problems have to do with writing and art and do not involve coloring or lettering. And this, basically, I just wanted to point people towards the problems that had to do with writing and art. I mean, there might be little quibbles you could have about the coloring or lettering in these particular pages, but there wasn't so much that I wanted people to focus on that. I just wanted people to think in terms of writing and art. Now, you'll notice I use the word problems. And I want people to understand that problems and errors are 2 different things. I was not necessarily saying that there were 6 things wrong with the first 8 pages. And I think that might be why some people had problems, or why a lot of people, I guess, had problems trying to take this challenge, because they were looking for something that was done wrong. And you're not going to find a whole lot of that, but you will find a lot of stuff that could have been done better. And granted, better can be subjective, but I think when I do put forward things that I think could have been done better, I also give reasons why they would have been done better. So errors and problems are 2 different things. Errors would be something like something is misspelled. You use the wrong word. Your grammar is wrong. Maybe there's a truck of a wrong color, or a hat of a wrong color. Those kinds of things are errors. They need to be fixed. But a problem might be something more along the lines of, this is kind of clear, but it would have been clearer if you'd said something like this. Or maybe the person could have been doing this at the time instead of that, and you would have had a better story opportunity. Those are things that could have been done better. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that all errors are problems. I mean, if you did something wrong, then it's better if you had done it right. But all problems are not errors. Just because something could have been done better doesn't mean that you did it wrong the way that you did. So what I was asking people to look for really was 6 ways in which some decision was made that really negatively impacted the page. And so it's not that it was necessarily something wrong with the page, but it was something that could have been improved upon. So that's what I'm going to be going on through. And I can give you a contrast between an error and a problem by showing you this. This is page 1 of Alphacore number 1. And in the top half of it, we see the Texas Trust Bank, and we have a bank robber here. He's got a bag full of money. He's got a gun pointed at this hostage's head. And he says, back off, or we both go up, which implies that there's a bomb somewhere. But it's not really clear where. And the reason it's not really clear where is because of the error that's on the page. Now, there's an error and there's a problem, and I'm going to show you both of these in turn. But the error is that the bag of money is blocking the reader's view of the bomb. It turns out that what this bank robber is wearing is a bomb vest. But you can't really see that because that bag of money is in the way. Now, there was nothing stopping the penciler, in this case Joe Bennett, from moving that bag of money over to the other side, and then in the portion that I've gotten rid of for the bag, throw in stuff that makes that an identifiable bomb. But I'm looking at that with that bag in the way, and all I'm seeing is a vest of some sort. I'm thinking that's just body armor. If he's got a bomb of some kind, maybe it's back there in the bank. So this is one of those things where the art is kind of stepping on itself. And one of the principles of doing comic book art is you never want to obscure anything that the reader needs to be aware of. In this case, it was the bag of money that was obscuring the bomb vest. There's also a case in ISOM number 2 where you had Larry Shungite's symbol on getting stepped on by the hands of the fans at the Southwest Style Wrestling League, or Southern Style Wrestling League, whatever it's called. And it's like, no, don't put that stuff in the way of the symbols. You're stepping on yourself. Another example of this comes from Cyberfrog Blood Honey, where Cyberfrog at one point is talking about the Sin power battery that Heather Swain was given, which is literally a piece of Chell Sin's heart. And when we finally get a chance to see the power battery, it's half obscured by Cyberfrog's head. And this becomes a vital piece of equipment later on at least in the Diary of Heather Swain, and also later on in Wrecked Planet, I believe. So it's like, if you want the reader to be aware of these things, you can't have your art stomping on it. So that's an example of an error. Now, the problem that I have with this page is what he's holding in his hand. He's got a gun pointed to her head, but he's wearing a bomb. If he has a bomb, isn't the real threat the bomb? And if the real threat is the bomb, why is he holding a gun and not a detonator? I mean, how does he plan to detonate the bomb? I mean, is it going to go off if he pulls the trigger on the gun? That doesn't make any sense. Now, there is kind of an in-story reason why he might be using the gun as opposed to the bomb. It turns out that the bomb is not something that he thinks is actually going to work. He thinks it's a fake bomb vest that he's wearing. But honestly, I think the real reason we have that gun there is on account of the next slide. On the next slide, we see this is page 4, and page 4 shows the bank robber having been hoisted into the air by Brian Solari. And Brian Solari is getting shot by the robber, and Brian Solari says, "You need to stop that. I'll live, but it still hurts. And this cape wasn't free." And it shows the bullets both bouncing off of him, which apparently is painful to him. He's like Superman, but he doesn't have the same kind of invulnerability that Superman has. And also his outfit gets a little bit shredded by the bullets as well. Now, on the pro side, who doesn't love an homage to Superman? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Superman #1 is basically the basis for Brian Solari's pose in this scene. That's the cover to Superman #1 from 1939. But there's a lot of cons on this page as well, and one of them is just the fact that it's a contrived scene. Now, obviously, the gun, instead of the more logical bomb detonator, was needed to show that bullets bounce off of Solari, but not without causing him some discomfort. I mean, it just feels like this is a thing that was kind of staged in reverse. How can we show his vulnerability? Well, the robber's gonna have to have a gun, but it doesn't really make sense for the robber to have had a gun. So it's one of those things where I'm thinking he really needed a detonator there, but because of our need to show off this particular point, we had to construct the fact that he had a gun. The other thing is that Solari I don't know if it's Solari or Solari. Solari cares more about the damage to his cape than he does about the fact that he's getting hurt. And we know that because he's got an exclamation point referring to the fact of this cape wasn't free, but he's just using periods to talk about the bullets hitting him. I mean, what? Really? Yeah, you're basically telling us that bullets cause him pain, but he's not so really worried about that he doesn't care about his cape more than that. I would think that you would want his actual vulnerability to be something that stands out. See, there's the exclamation point. The emphasis is more on the cape. By the way, how does he know that it's damaged? I mean, he's not looking at his cape, so how does he know that his cape is getting hit by the shots? That's another kind of inconsistency here. It's like you're not seeing any part where he's looking back to say, "Hey, quit shooting my cape." Is he's just assuming? So yeah, that's it. To me, that's a little bit of an inconsistency there as well. Plus, he looks bored. I mean, if you look at his facial expression, you don't see any urgency to the pain he's being caused by the bullets hitting him, or even annoyance over the damage being done to his cape. So you've got kind of a bored look on him. It just reminds me of the cover to ISOM #2, where you had Ethan Van Sciver's cover B, and Bloodruth is, being surrounded by and attacked by all these creatures in the cave, and she's got this expression on her face like, meh, same crap, different day. I mean, wouldn't it be better to at least give her some sort of facial expression so that we understand that she believes she's in danger and she's struggling to protect herself? I mean, to give your characters some kind of emotional resonance, that to me does a lot more to connect you emotionally with the characters than just leaving them stoic like that. So what is the biggest problem? Well, I think the biggest problem has to do with the damage to the cape, because not that the fact that the bullets damage the cape is the problem, but the fact that he notices it even though he's not looking at it. So I would go ahead and get rid of that little piece of dialogue. And what that does is it actually makes us focus more on the fact that Solari is, kind of invulnerable, but kind of not also. He can feel pain, even though he's not getting damaged by it. And moreover, the fact that there's no longer that contrast between his concern over the hurt that he's receiving and the damage being done to the cape means that the reason about him looking bored, I mean, there's not enough reason to think, okay, well now he should be more annoyed than he is by all that. The facial expression doesn't become that much of a problem anymore. So now we move on to the next panel. This is the first panel of the next page. And as Solari disarms the guy, he asks, you know how to disarm this? Which is kind of confusing because, the guy's looking at the gun. Everything's been about the gun so far. I mean, he held the gun up to the hostage's head. And of course, the bag of money was blocking the view of the bomb. And now you've got him divesting this guy of the gun, and then the guy's looking at the gun, but we're supposed to just know that even though these two things are focused on the gun, just as everything else has been focused on the gun, that Solari is talking about the bomb now. And of course, that's assuming that the reader even knows that the guy's wearing a bomb vest, because, with all the attention paid to the gun, why would the reader be looking at the guy's outfit? So here is the point at which, if the reader has not been clued in by this point that the guy is wearing a bomb vest, then we need the dialogue to clue us into that. That's not hand-holding, by the way. I mean, this is the point in the story where you definitely want the reader to be aware that the guy is wearing a bomb vest. So we can just change Solari's dialogue to, you know how to defuse this bomb you're wearing? Because the word defuse puts us in mind of a bomb as opposed to the gun, which can be disarmed. And then, of course, he explicitly mentions the bomb. In this particular thing, so the guy doesn't know how to defuse it, then Solari says, then I don't need you, do I? But that's where the emphasis on the word is wrong. And this is kind of a lettering thing, and this is not what I was intending anybody to find. But it really should be, then I don't need you, do I? because otherwise, if you're putting the emphasis on the word need, then you're distinguishing need versus some other relationship word. Like, I don't need you, I want you, I don't need you, I desire you, I don't need you, I abhor you. You know, what verb is supposed to be different there? Well, it's not the verb that he's having a difference with. It's the noun. It's, I don't need you, I just need the bomb vest you're wearing. So you is what should have been emphasized here. I love these two panels. These are the two panels at the bottom of, I think it's page 5. And I love it because it's setting up for a simultaneous catastrophe, in a sense. You're going to have the bomb exploding on one hand, and then you're going to have the guy splashing down in the swimming pool in the other hand. This is beautifully constructed, and what I'm expecting to see when I turn the page is these two things happening at the same time. So it should just be boom, splash, you know, right together practically. Unfortunately, I get disappointed because Joe Bennett decides he's going to layer the panels instead, which, instead of giving the impression of simultaneity, gives the impression of sequentialness. You get the boom first, and then you get the splash. Now, what's really upsetting about this, I mean, aside from the fact that it was just a missed opportunity to just overwhelm the reader's senses with this all this stuff happening at once, is the fact that it wouldn't have taken much. It would have just mean expanding the panel out to the side, so that instead of you having an overlap where you have that the sequentiality implied by the overlap, you just go ahead and have them be the same length, and you have the panels side by side, and now you've got this like boom, splash, and you know, everything's like happening all at once. I think there's a better way you could have done it too, but that's going to be in a couple other slides. But you know, I just don't like. I don't understand why it is that artists feel like they have to keep doing these special tricks, like layering panels or doing panel breaks. It's not necessary to tell the story, and sometimes it even hurts the story. Now here we have the guy getting taken out of the water by Solari, and we have a whole page. This is page 7, I think. We have this whole page now that is taken up by just lowering the guy to the ground. That's a wasted splash page. I mean, there's no reason this needed to take up an entire page. What I think could have happened instead is that on page 6, we could have had the boom of the bomb and the splash of the crook go side by side, because that would have been a much better indicator of simultaneity. You got boom, splash going on, everybody's freaking out. You know, Solari's watching the bomb go off, the swimmers around the guy are freaking out as he splashes down into the pool. And then at the top of page 7, you could have him crawling out of the pool and getting taken up by Solari. And then you've got plenty of room on the bottom of page 7 to see, you know, what you want to do with the extra space. You don't, because you didn't need the whole page for Solari's descent with the guy. And that means you could have had him descending with the guy, and then you've got plenty of room for an additional panel showing some other stuff. Or you could have had him playing around with the guy and then, you know, descending with him. Or you could have just expanded that scene and given us a little bit of extra information or extra art. But this would have been a way to stretch out the pages a little bit better, so that you didn't have just a wasted splash page. Now we've got the last of my review challenge pages. This is page 8, and we have Solari in a conversation with some police person named Flynn. His title's not given, Lieutenant Flynn or Officer Flynn or whoever the heck. We do know, however, that he's a member of the Poli. So Joe Bennett essentially tried to write police here and utterly failed. Wow. Okay. Poli. Yeah. I mean, there it is right there. And that made it past the editors. And honestly, it made it past me for a while, too. Now, this is a mistake that Joe Bennett actually got canceled for on account of his turning the word jewelry into the word Jewery. and and having that right over the Star of David. So so I mean, there are people who think he did this on purpose, and I think Joe Bennett was just basically saying, "Look, English is not my first language. I accidentally left a letter out." And here he's left a letter out in ISOM again. But there's the jewelry that should be jewelry. And it was a YouTuber, Suit Yourself, who made this visible to me, because honestly, I actually missed this. This was not one of the things that I saw when I was making my review. I just assumed that said police, and I didn't really pay it attention. And then I get this message under here from Suit Yourself saying "police," and honestly, I was afraid it might be an ethnic slur directed at me or something, because I'm Polish. so so I'm looking at that, I'm like, I don't know what this guy is saying. I mean, I don't know if he's slurring me or not, or if he's trying to communicate something else, but it turns out this was his actual answer to the review challenge. And it was the only answer I got from anybody. So congratulations for Poli. You are the winner. You are the winner of the Suit Yourself challenge. Sorry it took me so long to recognize that this was, an actual answer on your response. I was actually going to make this video and say, oh yeah, nobody responded to my challenge, but you were the one respondent, and you are the one who gets the glory for having discovered this particular item in the first few pages of Alphacore #1. So the thing that I focused on this page, on the other hand, was the end of the conversation. He says, "You're welcome, Flynn. For what? Look, no one got hurt and the bad guy's in custody." That's not the point. Yeah, it is. This guy have lasers coming out of his butt? Can he fly? Turn to stone? You know the rules for accepts. You come when we call you. You come when it's a freak call. Freak call? We had this. You don't need you showboating to save the day. I don't need this. Now, when he says we had this, honestly, because I feel like this is something that has been a discussion between them before, it is a conversation that they had before, I interpreted we had this to mean we had this conversation. In other words, I thought we had worked this out, or I thought you understood what your duties were, your responsibilities were. So and that's reinforced a little where Solari says, I don't need this. This seems to be the conversation that they're having. So I looked at it on my first read as saying we had this conversation. But after reviewing it in my mind and seeing, okay, what would be a more consistent interpretation, I was thinking, well, maybe what he's saying is we had this guy, we had this guy dead to rights, and then you go in and swoop him up. I think that's what was really meant there. And so if that is what's meant there, then it should have just been said. The dialogue by Flynn should have said, we had this guy. And that way it wouldn't have been any confusion. So that constitutes everything that I would have accepted as valid answers for my review challenge. Now, as an epilogue, I want to take a look at the 2 pages that are reintroducing us to these characters from ISOM #1. Now, this is Michael Copper and Lillian Renashi, although I'm not entirely certain about Michael Copper's identity, because when you look at him in Alphacore #1, does he look anything like he did in ISOM #1? I mean, take a look at him here, and then take a look at him here. It's like 2 entirely different guys. So I'm looking at him like, that's Michael Copper? I mean, what is he inhabiting somebody else's body now? I mean, is that what he does? Does he like shift from one body to another? Because that guy does not really look like the other guy at all. Moreover, I think there's a logistics fail in the way that this scene is constructed, because what we've got here is Lillian saying, are you aware of this, Michael? But she's still in the elevator. I mean, this scene, if I'm reading this right, is taking place. If you look at the door, it's got a reflective coating. There's a seam down the middle, and then there is this pad here, this keypad, and I'm thinking that's the elevator. I'm not thinking that's like the window next to her, although that was my first thought. So you've got that elevator all the way back there, and she's still inside the elevator, and she's already talking to him? That doesn't make any sense. She needs to at least get somewhere close to him where he can hear, and that's not going to be while the elevator doors are still closed. Moreover, honestly, I was, because the keypad's a little obscured there, I was thinking that she was just standing right there the whole time. It's not entirely clear that she was walking, although when I look at her legs, you can kind of see how one leg is kind of shifted behind the other. But I thought maybe she was just turning to face him and had been previously staring at her reflection in the window or something, or at least was facing the window and then turning towards him. But the thing is when he says there's coffee, yeah, that's when I knew that she had to be entering from outside, or from inside in this case. She's going from inside to outside. She had to be entering this area, or else he wouldn't have been telling her that, hey, there's coffee here. And by the way, I feel like the coffee represents a missed opportunity, because what we know from ISOM number 1 in this incredibly insulting scene, that we have the ability to do editor's notes. And editor's notes are these little boxes with the asterisk that connect it to somebody's text. And what it does is it kind of gives elaboration where you can connect it to some other comic and say, if somebody makes mention of something, you can put a star on it and say, this happened in ISOM number 1 or something like that, which is what I'm basically suggesting should have happened here. Because when you look at this remark, there's coffee, I mean, yeah, that's kind of a interesting way of brushing off her question, but wouldn't it be better if he said something that actually linked the two of them to their scene, their introduction in ISOM number 1? I'm thinking something like, taking that there's coffee and translating it instead into, Lillian, you really must try the coffee. I had the hotel staff brew it from the package of beans we purchased at Club Merc. It's downright divine. Now, he mentions Club Merc, and at that point you have the asterisk, and that ties down to the editor's note saying this was ISOM number 1. So what did this just accomplish? It puts a reason to buy ISOM number 1 in front of the reader. So if this reader is reading Alphacore number 1, it's like, oh, this guy was at Club Merc. This is not their first appearance. They were actually at Club Merc before, and Club Merc is something that is an ISOM number 1. I should go buy a copy of that. So this is a way you can get more sales for yourself by generating interest in your readers into buying other issues. Now, we kind of talk a little about his plans here, because one of the things I noticed from the next couple of pages is that, number 1, he doesn't realize that his plan to blow up the bank blow up the bank vault at least, did not come to fruition, and moreover, that he was intending the bomb to go off in the vault. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm trying to construct it in my mind, how Michael Copper could have ever thought up a plan this ridiculous. I mean, seriously, let's look at Michael Copper's master plan here. Number 1, he's going to hire a lone thief, not a team, which you would normally send to rob a bank, but just one guy to rob a bank vault while wearing a genuine bomb vest that he thinks is fake. And this is the important part. He's got to assume that this guy is going to follow instructions and rob the vault and not just a teller. Well, obviously that's not what happened, because this guy brought a Candy World bag to hold all of the money that he was going to get from the vault or something. And I mean, what the hell? There's no way that one guy is going to rob a vault worth of stuff, and obviously all he did was take cash anyway. So it's pretty clear that he never even got to the vault. Now, even though you need, here's part two of the plan. Even though you need the bomb to blow up inside the vault, let's just set it to detonate at a specific time, whether it's in the vault or not. And the reason I say that is because why else did it explode in the air? I mean, bombs don't just go off unless they're on a timer of some sort. The bombs, generally speaking, they're set up so that you either need to trigger it by a detonator or there's going to be a timed detonator on it. So why else did the bomb go off unless it was on a timer? And why would it have been a timer if the guy actually needed to be in the vault at the time? Now, I did actually kind of think up an explanation for this. I thought to myself, well, what if when Solari threw the bomb up in the air, he actually threw the bomb over where the precise spot where the bank vault was located so that the GPS coordinates triggered the bomb to go off? Of course, that would have had to have happened entirely at random. It's another Avery colliding with Yaira type thing, but it's possible at least. So I'm trying to think of ways that maybe this can make sense. But the worst part is, don't monitor the bank robbery yourself and don't have anyone else monitor the situation for you. And that's clear since he was completely surprised that his plan didn't come to fruition. Because of course, nothing could possibly go wrong with your perfect plan and your bomb that isn't even set to detonate properly. Oh my God. I mean, this Michael Copper guy is like an idiot. Is he supposed to be an idiot? I mean, it's about as lame as when Darren basically threatened Santuan with lesser job prospects. I mean, these villains that the Rippaverse is coming up with are really freaking lame. Okay, that's all I got to say about Alphacore #1 for now. I can't say that there's a whole lot of stuff in the book that's wrong, but it is still problematic. It's reminding me a lot of ISOM #1 because my judgment on ISOM #1, if you recall, was that it's a good book, but it's hampered by so many flaws and ways that things could have been done better that that it made it a painful read. And Alphacore #1 is starting off that same way. I'm 10 pages in now, and I'm just kind of dreading what the next 80 or so pages are going to bring. Because if these 80 pages already, or if the 10 pages I've read are hurting me this much, then I'm not expecting that the quality control for the rest of the book is going to be any better. I honestly, it feels like, same stuff, different day. It's not horrible, but it's definitely not as good as it could be. And that's my first impression of the book. I'm going to hold off on making more Alphacore #1 videos for a while because one of my followers on YouTube said that he hasn't gotten his copy yet, and I realized that's probably the case for a lot of people out there right now. And so there's no sense in my going through the trouble of making these, spoiler-heavy review videos if all I'm going to do is wind up, not getting a lot of people watching them or reading them, viewing them, because they haven't gotten their own copies of Alphacore yet. So I'm going to hold off on a while, at least another week or so, before I do any more of these Alphacore #1 review videos. But I'm sure, just based on what I'm seeing now, that there's going to be more forthcoming. So I'm still hopeful that at the end of all this, it's going to turn out to be a good book, but it's already starting to build up that kind of friction where there could reach a critical mass where I'm just like, just screw this noise. So yeah, I can't say I'm either optimistic or pessimistic at this point. I'm just kind of still in limbo, same as I was before I even picked up the book. This could wind up good. This could wind up terrible. And we're just going to have to go through more pages to see. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was educational for you. This has been my first Let's Fix Alphacore #1 video, with more to come in about a week or so. And that's going to be it for now. I will talk to you all later.